Almost every American soldier has shown bravery during times of war. Alvin York, however, took this a step further. He is regarded as one of the best soldiers to serve during World War I, and his bravery could not be possibly matched by anyone else in American history. I have watched a movie about Alvin York and have done some prior research on him, so I have an idea of who he was. Alvin York was a soldier like no other whose bravery helped him to succeed in war. Today, we will talk about Alvin Cullum York and how his bravery in World War I helped him to defeat German forces. Let's begin. We will first talk briefly about York's life before World War I. According to Kennedy Herman, York was born on December 13th, 1887, in Fentress County, Tennessee, near the Tennessee-Kentucky border, which is a very rural area up in the Cumberland Mountains. He was one of 11 children, and he was forced to work hard from an early age because of the untimely death of his father. He had also only received 9 months of formal education in his life, so he had to teach himself to read and write later on. Later on in life, he became a heavy drinker and an excessive gambler, but he was also known as an excellent marksman. There were stories of him winning shooting contests by being able to shoot the head off of a turkey from 100 yards, and as a result, he would win that turkey as a prize for his family. And even though he was a family man, he was still causing troubles with his drinking and his gambling. His life changed, however, when one of his friends was killed in a bar fight. This made him look at his life and ask a very hard question to himself. Do I want the rest of my life to be like this? And the answer was a simple no. And as a result of this, he joined the Church of Christ and Christian Union, which was a denomination known for opposing violence. And as a result of this, he met his future wife, Gracie Williams, who was 13 years his junior. And while he was changing his life, the landscape of the world was also changing. It was in 1914 when Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austro-Hungarian Empire was murdered by a Serbian nationalist, and this sparked World War I. It wasn't until April 6, 1917 when America entered the war under the leadership of Woodrow Wilson. It was on June 5th, 1917, when Alvin York registered for the draft. He had registered as a conscientious objector, a soldier who was still willing to serve, but in a non-violent role, maybe as a medic or a cook, or someone who worked behind the front lines. He decided to fight, however, when some of his commanders who were above him convinced him using verses from the Bible, saying that how the Israelites had fought and committed violence in the name of God, and that he could be doing this too. Him and his platoon, the 82nd Division, set sail from Boston, Massachusetts in early May of 1918 and arrived in France later that month. They spent the next 4 months in training before being sent to the front lines on October 7th, 1918. It was on October 8th, 1918, however, according to History.com, where Alvin York would earn his Medal of Honor. It was here where him and his 16 other men were told to take German-held positions across a valley from them in France. And while they were making their way across this valley, the Germans fired at them from a machine gun nest, killing 9 of them. And one of the men killed was the officer of the group. And so, since York was second in charge, he was put in charge. And according to a journal entry from York, the Germans would poke up their heads like turkeys, and he would just pick them off. And York would just pick them off one by one, showing his excellent marksman skills. The other soldiers caught light of this, and they continued to fire and push forward because of the bravery of their leader. And as they drew closer, the German commander thought there was more American soldiers than there actually were. So, him and his 90 men surrendered. And while York and his men were taking the Germans back as prisoners, they were able to capture 42 other men, making it a total of 132. And York was credited with killing 20 men by himself. And as a result of this bravery, He was awarded the Medal of Honor in April of 1919, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. He also received the French and British awards equivalents of the Medal of Honor. And his popularity really sprung when, later that month, an article was written about him in the Saturday Evening Post. And as a result of this, he was offered $250,000 in endorsements and money for serving, but he did not take it because he thought he was a man of principle, and committing violence and serving his country did not warrant his need for money. And later that year, in June of 1919, he married Gracie Williams, and he eventually opened up a school in rural Tennessee in 1926. And in this area, as you know, he did not receive much education, so he wanted to help kids continue their education. And a movie was made about him in 1941, starring Gary Cooper. And it was a very successful film. It won the Oscar for Best Picture, and Gary Cooper won the Oscar for Best Actor. It was also a cry for the need for soldiers, and it really helped the popularity for World War II, because if men could be like Alvin York and show bravery during a war, maybe they will receive the same honor that he did. And sadly, it was on September 2nd, 1964, when Alvin York passed away. That sums up the life and heroic actions of Alvin York. In conclusion, Alvin York was a soldier like no other, whose determination helped him succeed in war. To quote York, "The fear of God makes a hero. The fear of man makes a coward." Some inspirational words from an inspirational man. Alvin York's bravery will go down in history as some of the best ever portrayed during times of war. Thank you.